Good morning. It's more than a great honor for me to be here this morning and to respond to Professor Ben Habib's paper. I can say without hesitation that much of my work and certainly most of what I have ever written on Arendt has been influenced by your work. So I find everything you recently published on rights, and cosmopolitanism absolutely fascinating. So it was a real pleasure to read your paper and to reflect on it. I would like to start with a point that you developed at the end of the paper, the question of the origin of the law. Arendt's position is put in opposition to that of Schmitt and that of Sklar, in opposition to Schmitt, who grounds the law in an order of the earth that precedes human acts of lawmaking, and to Sklar, from whom the law is through and through social and historical, namely human. Arendt's position is different from both and more ambiguous. As you write, by contrast to both Schmitt and Sklar, Arendt wants to, quote, give law solidity without ontologizing it. Why does Arendt want to do that? Because both ontologizing the origin of the law and not giving it solidity are dangerous. The former neglects the fluidity and the historicity and hence the freedom of human plurality. The latter opens the door to the worst cases of relativism and nihilism that may end in totalitarian politics. As you explain in the paper, for Arendt, the law frames the political from outside, but it is made possible by the political. Neither the law nor the political precedes the other. Therefore, there's a circularity. There can be no political without the law, and no law without the political. The problem is therefore that of the beginning, the foundation of the law and the foundation of the political. This is the basic question of the book on revolution, in which Arendt says that, quote, revolutions are the only political events which confront us directly and inevitably with the problem of beginning. But what does the problem of beginning mean exactly? At first sight, it seems to mean an interrogation about what happened first and how it happened. But for Arendt, it does not mean exactly that. If it did, she would offer or try to offer an answer in terms of God or in terms of nature, or an answer that could eventually be reducible to God or nature. However, in On Revolution, she explicitly refuses to go in that direction. In this, her philosophy is non-foundationalist, but in quite a paradoxical way. The foundations, or the moments of foundation, do appear in Arendt, but always as a question, never as an answer. We never know what the foundation exactly is, but we know that there's a question about the foundation, about the beginning. Therefore, the beginning appears in Arendt as a question that remains without an answer. This is so because for her the beginning is not a static, defined moment, but a process, something that has always already been transformed. The beginning is part of an ever-unfolding series of actions or events that stretches both backwards and forwards. Of course, there are speech acts, performative acts that create new situations, but these only exist within a process that includes other such acts. Therefore, the question of the beginning is that of the transformation of the past into the present and the future, a past that always has its own past. It is this idea that is very well expressed in the paper and in your work in general by the concept of iteration, a process by which we realize that, quote, I'm quoting you, every original is a consequence of a prior interpretation or iteration. It is also expressed by the concept of iterability in the body of work developed by Derrida in reference to and in critique of Austin, or in Derrida's concept of différence in general, différence with an A, of course, in general, all those being variations or radicalization of Hegel's Aufhebung. Of course, Derrida was convinced that he went far beyond the Aufhebung, but nothing is less certain, and I personally don't think it's very easy to go beyond Hegel, if only because going beyond Hegel is a kind of Aufhebung, which means it's Hegelian. So, Arendt creates her own variation on this theme, the theme of the Aufhebung. And that is here that we can find her attempt to give law and politics some solidity without ontologizing them. Her main concept in that context is, I think, tradition. Arendt's writing on tradition can be found in the preface of Between Past and Future. There she formulates the question of the beginning using the metaphor of the lost treasure, I quote. The history of revolutions could be told in parable form as the tale of an age-old treasure, which, under the most varied circumstances, appears abruptly, unexpectedly, and disappears again under different mysterious conditions. There exist indeed many good reasons to believe that the treasure was never a reality, but a mirage, end of quote. The metaphor of the lost treasure, which she takes from the French poet René Char, invokes something that is no longer there, indeed something that we can never be totally sure was ever there, that we ever owned it or owned it fully. Even though we miss it, we have the feeling, the intuition that it once existed, but we don't know exactly where or when. The treasure is definitely lost, says Arendt, when tradition has been broken. Quote, without tradition, which selects and names, which hands down and preserves, which indicates where the treasures are and what their worth is, there seems to be no willed continuity in time, and hence, humanly speaking, neither past and future, only some eternal change of the world and the biological cycle of living creatures in it. End of quote. Without tradition, for Arendt, there is no politics and no history, only biology. Although it may seem in the preface of Between Past and Future and in other texts that Arendt laments the breaking of tradition, it is also clear from her work that she never thought tradition could ever disappear for good. This is so because tradition is not something that is in a fixed way, but something that has to be retrieved, something we must look for. Therefore, tradition is always at the same time something that looks lost or broken, and something that we must try to rediscover or mend. Tradition is the tension between what seems to be forgotten and our attempt to rescue it from oblivion. If so, tradition is by definition a process of transformation. Something is forgotten, something is retrieved, and in that process, something new appears. Something that is both totally novel and totally connected to the past. This process is famously described by Arendt in her essay on Walter Benjamin, where she says, I quote, like a pearl diver who descends to the bottom of the sea, not to excavate the bottom and bring it to light, but to pry loose the rich and the strange, the pearls and the coral, in the depth, and to carry them to the surface. This thinking delves into the depths of the past, but not in order to resuscitate it the way it was, and to contribute to the renewal of extinct ages. What guides this thinking is the conviction that some things suffer a sea change and survive in new crystallized forms and shapes, as though they waited only for the pearl diver who one day will come down to them and bring them into the world of the living. End of quote. So, tradition is the process of bringing into our lives new forms of the past. It's not the past itself, unchanged, that is relived, but novelties, innovations, transformations that can look very different from what once was. I would like here to recall an etymology. I would probably not do this in all contexts, but we know how Arendt loved etymologies, so I feel okay doing it here. Tradition and treason have exactly the same Latin etymology, trans dare, to give across. Tradition and treason are, in a way, the same word. In the process of giving across time, you transform, and therefore tradition is always treason toward what was in the past. Politics and the law, understood in the context of tradition, are, as we would say today, connected to the past and constantly renewed. Their being connected should be, for Arendt, the best defense against the danger of ideology. Their renewal is the condition of freedom. It is because of this understanding of tradition that Arendt is neither modern nor postmodern, or to use Sheila Ben Habib's expression, that she is reluctant in both. It seems to me that we have much to learn from a political concept of tradition that includes changes and transformations with a connection to the past. A tradition that is not the jealous keeping or respect of an essential past, which by the way probably never existed, but a connection to past experiences that gives some framework, open to change, and therefore some meaning to our present. Thank you.